My name's Ted Rubin. It's tedrubin.com and at Ted Rubin on Twitter, amongst other Twitter handles. I've been involved in this space since 1997, and I'm with a company called Collective Bias. We're a social shopper media company, so we create content at scale, influencer, user-generated, along the path to purchase, talking about brands and retailers. What drove me to this is I discovered the internet in 97 and joined Seth Godin at Yo-Yo9. And Seth was one of the first guys talking about, he called it permission marketing. He coined that term in 1998 in an article in Fast Company before he wrote the book. We were talking about that at Yo-Yo9 in the early days. And that's really what, then he started talking about the viral nature and how people connect. And that was really the beginning of my thinking on building relationships. And it drove me because I've always been a networker. And now all of a sudden we have these platforms that enable you to network at scale. And most people are using it as networking, not community building. And so I saw an opportunity there. And what drives me now? Well, I guess what drives me now most is I think about my daughters a lot. I've learned a tremendous amount from them. I'm a divorced dad. I've been through some challenges staying in my daughters' lives. So I've learned how to appreciate moments and how to find the right time to speak to them. And what I've been doing now is I'm trying to apply a lot of what I've learned there to how we market to people. So the same way we shout at our kids and say, listen to me, do it better. We're doing that to consumers. And what are the consumers doing? Just like our teenage kids, they're blocking us out. So for me, I try to find those moments with my daughters and with consumers. I think the biggest trend that people have to be careful of is worrying about what's next and not concentrating on what's now. And I think that's kind of the biggest mistake, is that people are always looking for those next trends. And I think it's important to keep an eye open to what's happening and have a view into it, but be very careful to execute on what you've learned and what's working. So, clearly mobile is really important, and it's where a lot of things are going. But I think sometimes people think too much about mobile as a phone. They think of it too much about being on the move rather than where they're absorbing their content. So I think that that's going to be big for this year. I think media is really changing right now, and I think brands have to start getting on this whole bandwagon of content creation. It's a beast. And content is so important that brands and marketers have to figure out, how do they scale that? How do they use user-generated influencer content to reach their market and integrate it in everything they're doing? My advice to them would be to get involved, okay? To start paying attention. Now, you don't necessarily have to jump in and tweet on Twitter or post on Facebook, but have an account. Go in there, look at what people are doing, especially a medium like Twitter, which has so many different people on it, and the search capabilities are enormous. So what I would do is I would open up one or two, or maybe even three, play around a little bit, see what works for you. People will tell you, oh my God, you have to have a Twitter handle, you have to be on Pinterest, you have to do Instagram. I say, figure out which one you're most comfortable with, get started there, and start figuring it out. What's really important is to humanize yourself, is to what I call look people in the eye digitally. So we're here, and I'm supposed to be looking at the camera, but I'm talking to you for a moment, so now I'm looking you in the eye. That makes you feel like I'm really communicating with you. So now I'm looking at the audience, and now they feel like I'm really paying attention to them. So people say, how do you do that digitally? Well, you look at someone's profile, you call them by name. Remember, don't ever forget that one of the most important things on the internet, go back to the beginning of all this marketing time and look at Dale Carnegie and what he talked about making people feel special, calling them by name, knowing something about them. It's so easy to do because there's so much information out there, but nobody takes the time. They click a button, they call it a friend. So I say, let's take the word friend back. Let's really get to know who these people are. Even with just a brief glance at their profile, I can mention to somebody who retweets or tweets me on Twitter and say, hey, I love to ski. And they know that I'm talking about the fact they're from Park City. And one last thing, a lot of brands will tell you this doesn't scale. How do you do that at scale if you have millions of followers or millions of customers? Well, the truth of the matter is, most people don't want to communicate with you directly. They're going to lurk and watch you communicating with others and participate vicariously. And when they see you calling people by name, carrying on conversations, answering questions, they're going to feel like they are building that relationship and having that same engagement as well. What I can tell you is I think content's going to play a much more important part going forward. I believe one day peer-to-peer commerce is going to be really, people talk about social commerce. What they're really talking about social commerce is peer-to-peer commerce, because social commerce is kind of a misnomer, because none of us really want to do commerce while we're socializing. I mean, I don't care how much I like your shirt, if we're in a bar, even if I could buy it from somebody standing right over there, I'm probably not going to do it. I'm going to think about it later. So it's one of the reasons that commerce isn't really taking off in platforms like Facebook or Twitter right there. Like, I don't care what stores are being opened up on Facebook, because I'm not going to shop there. So what I see is peer-to-peer commerce is going to happen one day, where we are willing to buy from each other. And I think content's going to go to that point where we're really having a view into what each one of our friends thinks, and then be able to link right from that to things that we want to do in our lives, whether it's travel, eating food, socializing together, or buying things we need. I have to tell you, for me, the biggest thing for me in 2013 is collective bias. Things are really going great for us. We made a major transformation in 2012 from primarily an agency to primarily a media business. And right now I'd say we're 70 to 80% media, which really makes us like most media companies, because the Hearst, the Condés, all the big traditional media companies, or any of them today, are partly agencies. Because if you're going to be selling cross-platform, you need to have a consultative sale, and you have to understand how to use those platforms. So we're really excited about this year, because now we consider ourselves a true media business. We're expanding into London, we're expanding into Canada. We have 3 offices in the States now: Bentonville, New York, and San Francisco. And I'm excited for what it holds for the way we're going to produce content along the path to purchase, using influencers and user-generated content integrated into the shopping process.